Hello, and welcome to this audiobook recording of Keeping Children Safe in Education 2025, Part 1 Information for All School and College Staff. My name's Lewis Donald. I'm the Principal Safeguarding Partner at EduShield Limited, a specialist safeguarding and major incident partnership. Part 1 Safeguarding Information for All Staff. What school and college staff should know and do. A child-centred and coordinated approach to safeguarding. Schools and colleges and their staff are an important part of the wider safeguarding system for children. This system is described in the statutory guidance Working Together to Safeguard Children. Safeguarding and promoting the welfare of children is everyone's responsibility. Children includes everyone under the age of 18. Everyone who comes into contact with children and their families has a role to play. In order to fulfill this responsibility effectively, all practitioners should make sure their approach is child-centred. This means they should consider at all times what is in the best interests of the child. No single practitioner can have a full picture of a child's needs and circumstances. If children and families are to receive the right help at the right time, everyone who comes into contact with them has a role to play in identifying concerns, sharing information, and taking prompt action. Safeguarding and promoting the welfare of children is defined for the purposes of this guidance as providing help and support to meet the needs of children as soon as problems emerge. Protecting children from maltreatment, whether that is within or outside the home, including online. Preventing the impairment of children's mental and physical health or development. Ensuring that children grow up in circumstances consistent with the provision of safe and effective care. And taking action to enable all children to have the best outcomes. The role of school and college staff. School and college staff are particularly important as they are in a position to identify concerns early, provide help for children, promote children's welfare, and prevent concerns from escalating. All staff have a responsibility to provide a safe environment in which children can learn. All staff should be prepared to identify children who may benefit from early help. Early help means providing support as soon as a problem emerges and at any point in a child's life, from the foundation years through to the teenage years. Any staff member who has concerns about a child's welfare should follow the processes set out later in this guidance. Staff should expect to support social workers and other agencies following any referral. Every school and college should have a designated safeguarding lead who will provide support to staff to carry out their safeguarding duties, and who will liaise closely with other services such as local authority children's social care. The designated safeguarding lead and any deputies are most likely to have a complete safeguarding picture and be the most appropriate person to advise on the response to safeguarding concerns. The Teacher Standards 2012 state that teachers, which includes head teachers, should safeguard children's well-being and maintain public trust in the teaching profession as part of their professional duties. What school and college staff need to know. All staff should be aware of the systems their school or college which support safeguarding, and these should be explained to them as part of their staff induction. This should include the Child Protection Policy, which should, amongst other things, also include the policies and procedures to deal with child-on-child abuse. Behaviour Policy, which should include measures to prevent bullying, including cyberbullying, prejudice-based and discriminatory bullying. Staff Behaviour Policy, sometimes called a Code of Conduct. Staff, amongst other things, should learn about low-level concerns, allegations against staff, and whistleblowing. Safeguarding response to children who are absent from education, particularly on repeat occasion and or prolonged periods. And the role of the designated safeguarding lead, including the identity of the designated safeguarding lead and any deputies. Copies of this guidance, Part 1 Keeping Children Safe in Education, should be provided to all staff at induction. All staff should receive appropriate safeguarding and child protection training, including online safety, which, amongst other things, includes an understanding of the expectations, applicable roles and responsibilities in relation to filtering and monitoring, at induction. The training should be regularly updated. In addition, staff should receive safeguarding and child protection, including online safety updates, for example via email, e-bulletin and staff meetings, as required and at least annually, to continue to provide them with the relevant skills and knowledge to safeguard children effectively. All staff should be aware of their local early help process and understand their role in it. Staff should be aware of the process for making referrals to local authority children's social care and for statutory assessments under the Children's Act of 1989, especially Section 17, Children in Need, and Section 47, a child suffering or likely to suffer significant harm. That may follow a referral, along with the role they might be expected to play in such assessments. All staff should know what to do if a child tells them they are being abused, exploited, or neglected. Staff should know how to manage the requirements to maintain an appropriate level of confidentiality. This means only involving those who need to be involved, such as the designated safeguarding lead or a deputy, and local authority children's social care. Staff should never promise a child that they will not tell anyone about a report of any form of abuse, as this may ultimately not be in the best interests of the child. All staff should be able to reassure victims that they are being taken seriously and that they will be supported and kept safe. A victim should be never given the impression that they are creating a problem by reporting any form of abuse and/or neglect. Nor should a victim ever be made to feel ashamed for making a report. All staff should be aware that children may not feel ready or know how to tell someone that they are being abused, exploited, or neglected, and/or they may not recognise their experiences as harmful. For example, children may feel embarrassed, humiliated, or are being threatened. This could be due to their vulnerability, disability, and/or sexual orientation or language barriers. This should not prevent staff from having a professional curiosity and speaking to the designated safeguarding lead if they have concerns about a child. It is also important that staff determine how best to build trusted relationships which facilitate communication with children and young people. What school and college staff should look out for? Early help. Any child may benefit from early help, but all school and college staff should be particularly alert to the potential need for early help for a child who is disabled or has certain health conditions and has specific additional needs. Has a special educational needs, whether or not they have a statutory educational healthcare plan, has a mental health need, is a young carer, is showing signs of being drawn into antisocial or criminal behaviour, including gang involvement and association with organised crime groups or county lines, is frequently missing, goes missing from education, home or care, has experienced multiple suspensions, is at risk of being permanently excluded from schools, colleges, and in alternative provision or a pupil referral unit, is at risk of modern slavery, trafficking, sexual and/or criminal exploitation, is at risk of being radicalised or exploited, has a parent or carer in custody or has been affected by parental offending, is in a family circumstance preventing challenges for the child such as drug and alcohol misuse, adult mental health issues and domestic violence, is misusing alcohol and any other drugs themselves, is at risk of so-called honour-based abuse, such as female genital mutilation or forced marriage, and is a privately fostered child. Abuse, neglect, and exploitation. All staff should be aware of the indicators of abuse, neglect, and exploitation, understanding that children can be at risk of harm inside and outside of the school or college, inside and outside of the home, and online. Exercising professional curiosity and knowing what to look for is vital for the early identification of abuse and neglect, so that staff are able to identify cases of children who may be in need of help or protection. All school and college staff should be aware that abuse, neglect, exploitation, and safeguarding issues are rarely standalone events and cannot be covered by one definition or one label alone. In most cases, multiple issues will overlap. All staff, but especially the designated safeguarding lead and deputies, should consider whether children are at risk of abuse or exploitation in situations outside their families. Extrafamilial harms take a variety of different forms, and children can be vulnerable to multiple harms, including, but not limited to, sexual abuse, including harassment and exploitation, domestic abuse in their own intimate relationships, teenage relationship abuse, criminal exploitation, serious youth violence, county lines, and radicalisation. All staff should be aware that technology is a significant component in many safeguarding and wellbeing issues. Children are at risk of abuse and other risks online, as well as face to face. In many cases, abuse and other risks will take place concurrently both online and offline. Children can also abuse other children online, and this can take the form of abusive, harassing, and misogynistic, misandric messages, the non consensual sharing of indecent images, especially around chat groups, and the sharing of abusive images and pornography to those who do not wish to receive them. In all cases, if staff are unsure, they should always speak to the designated safeguarding lead or a deputy. Indicators of abuse and neglect. Abuse, a form of maltreatment of a child. Somebody may abuse or neglect a child by inflicting harm or by failing to act to prevent harm. Harm can include ill treatment that is not physical, as well as the impact of witnessing ill treatment of others. This can be particularly relevant, for example, in relation to the impact on children of all forms of domestic abuse, including where they see, hear, or experience its effects. Children may be abused in a family or in an institutional or community setting by those known to them or, more rarely, by others. Abuse can take place wholly online, or technology may be used to facilitate offline abuse. Children may be abused by an adult or adults, or by another child or children. Physical abuse, a form of abuse which may involve hitting, shaking, throwing, poisoning, burning, or scalding, drowning, suffocating, or otherwise causing physical harm to a child. Physical harm may also be caused when a parent or carer fabricates the symptoms of or deliberately induces illness in a child. Emotional abuse, the persistent emotional maltreatment of a child, such as to cause severe and adverse effects on the child's emotional development. It may involve conveying to a child that they are worthless or unloved, inadequate, or valued only insofar as they meet the needs of another person. It may include not giving the child opportunities to express their views, deliberately silencing them, or making fun of what they have to say or how they communicate. It may feature age or developmentally inappropriate expectations being imposed on children. These may include interactions that are beyond a child's developmental capability, as well as overprotection and limitation of exploration and learning, or preventing the child from participating in normal social interaction. It may involve seeing or hearing the ill treatment of another. It may involve serious bullying, including cyberbullying, causing children frequently to feel frightened or in danger, or the exploitation or corruption of children. Some level of emotional abuse is involved in all types of maltreatment of a child, although it may occur alone. Sexual abuse involves forcing or inciting a child or young person to take part in sexual activities, not necessarily involving violence. Whether or not the child is aware of what's happening, the activities may involve physical contact, including assault by penetration, for example, rape or oral sex, or non penetrative acts such as masturbation, kissing, rubbing, and touching the outside of clothing. They may also include non contact activities, such as involving children in looking at or in the production of sexual images, watching sexual activities, encouraging children to behave in sexually inappropriate ways, or grooming a child in preparation for abuse. Sexual abuse can take place online, and technology can be used to facilitate offline abuse. Sexual abuse is not solely perpetrated by adult males. Women can also commit acts of sexual abuse, as can other children. The sexual abuse of children by other children is a specific safeguarding issue in education, and all staff should be aware of it and of their school or college's policies and procedures for dealing with it. Neglect, the persistent failure to meet a child's basic physical and/or psychological needs, likely to result in the serious impairment of the child's health or development. Neglect may occur during pregnancy, for example, as a result of maternal substance abuse. Once a child is born, neglect may involve a parent or carer failing to provide adequate food, clothing, and shelter, including exclusion from the home or abandonment. Protect a child from physical and emotional harm or danger. ensure adequate supervision, including the use of inadequate caregivers, or ensure access to appropriate medical care or treatment. It may also include neglect of or unresponsiveness to a child's basic emotional needs. All staff should have an awareness of safeguarding issues that can put children at risk of harm. Behaviours linked to issues such as drug taking and or alcohol misuse, unexplainable and or persistent absences from education, serious violence, including that linked to county lines, radicalisation, unconsensual and non-consensual sharing of nude and semi-nude images and or videos can be signs that children are at risk. Below are some safeguarding issues that all staff should be aware of. Child-on-child abuse. All staff should be aware that children can abuse other children, often referred to as child-on-child abuse, and that it can happen both inside and outside of a college or school and online. All staff should be clear as to the school or college's policy and procedures with regard to child-on-child abuse and the important role they have to play in preventing it and responding where they believe a child may be at risk from it. All staff should understand that even if there are no reports in their schools or colleges, it does not mean it is not happening. It may be the case that abuse is not being reported. As such, it is important that when staff have any concerns regarding child-on-child abuse, they should speak to their designated safeguarding lead or a deputy. It is essential that all staff understand the importance of challenging inappropriate behaviours between children that are abusive in nature, examples of which are listed below. Downplaying certain behaviours, for example dismissing sexual harassment as just banter or just having a laugh, part of growing up, or boys being boys, can lead to a culture of unacceptable behaviours, an unsafe environment for children, and in worst case scenarios, a culture that normalises abuse, leading to children accepting it as normal and not coming forward to report it. Child-on-child abuse is most likely to include, but may not be limited to, bullying, including cyberbullying, prejudice-based bullying, and discriminatory bullying. Abuse in intimate personal relationships between children, sometimes known as teenage relationship abuse. Physical abuse such as hitting, kicking, shaking, biting, hair pulling, or otherwise causing physical harm. Sexual violence such as rape, assault by penetration, and sexual assault. Sexual harassment, such as sexual comments, remarks, jokes, and online sexual harassment, which may be standalone or part of a broader pattern of abuse. Causing someone to engage in sexual activity without consent, such as forcing someone to strip, touch themselves sexually, or to engage in sexual activity with a third party. Consensual and non-consensual sharing of nude and semi-nude images and or videos, also known as sexting or youth-produced sexual imagery. Upskirting, which typically involves taking a picture under a person's clothing without their permission, with the intention of viewing their genitals or buttocks to obtain sexual gratification, or cause the victim humiliation, distress, or alarm. An initiation, hazing-type violence and rituals. This could include activities involving harassment, abuse, or humiliation, used as a way of initiating a person into a group, and may also include an online element. Child criminal exploitation, CCE, and CSE, child sexual exploitation. Both CCE and CSE are forms of abuse that occur where an individual or group takes advantage of an imbalance in power to coerce, manipulate, or deceive a child into taking part in criminal or sexual activity. It may involve an exchange for something the victim needs or wants, and or for the financial advantage or increased status of the perpetrator or facilitator, and or through violence or the threat of violence. CCE and CSE can affect children, both male and female, and can include children who have been moved, commonly referred to as trafficking, for the purposes of exploitation. Child criminal exploitation. Some specific forms of CCE can include children being forced or manipulated into transporting drugs or money through county lines, working in cannabis factories, shoplifting or pickpocketing. They can also be forced or manipulated into committing vehicle crime or threatening, committing serious violence to others. Children can become trapped by this type of exploitation, as perpetrators can threaten victims and their families with violence or entrap and coerce them into debt. They may be coerced into carrying weapons such as knives, or begin to carry a knife for a sense of protection from harm from others. As children involved in criminal exploitation often commit crimes themselves, their vulnerability as victims is not always recognised by adults and professionals, particularly older children, and they are not treated as victims despite the harm they have experienced. They may still be criminally exploited even if the activity appears to be something they've agreed or consented to. It is important to note that the experience of girls who are criminally exploited can be very different to that of boys. The indicators may not be the same. However, professionals should be aware that girls are at risk of criminal exploitation too. It is also important to note that both boys and girls being criminally exploited may be at higher risk of sexual exploitation. Child sexual exploitation. CSE is a form of child sexual abuse. Sexual abuse may involve physical contact, including assault by penetration, for example, rape or oral rape, or non penetrative acts such as masturbation, kissing, rubbing, and touching outside of clothing. It may include non contact activities, such as involving children in the production of sexual images, forcing children to look at sexual images or watch sexual activities, encouraging children to behave in sexually inappropriate ways, or grooming a child in preparation for abuse, including via the internet. CSE can occur over time or be a one off occurrence and may happen without the child's immediate knowledge, for example, through others sharing videos or images of them on social media. CSE can affect any child who has been coerced into engaging in sexual activities. This includes 16 and 17-year-olds who can legally consent to have sex. Some children do not realise they are being exploited and may believe they are in a genuine romantic relationship. Domestic abuse. Domestic abuse can encompass a wide range of behaviours and may be a single incident or a pattern of incidents. That abuse can be, but is not limited to, psychological, physical, sexual, financial, or emotional. Children can be victims of domestic abuse. They may see, hear, or experience the effects of abuse at home and or suffer domestic violence in their own intimate relationships, teenage relationship abuse, all of which can have a detrimental and long-term impact on their health, well-being, development, and ability to learn. Female genital mutilation. Whilst all staff should speak to the designated safeguarding lead or a deputy with regard to any concerns about female genital mutilation, there is a specific legal duty on teachers. If a teacher, in the course of their work in the profession, discovers that an act of FGM appears to have been carried out on a girl under the age of 18, the teacher must report this to the police. Mental health. All staff should be aware that mental health problems can, in some cases, be an indicator that a child has suffered or is at risk of suffering abuse, neglect, or exploitation. Only appropriately trained professionals should attempt to make a diagnosis of a mental health problem. Education staff, however, are well placed to observe children day to day and identify those whose behaviour suggests that they may be experiencing a mental health problem or be at risk of developing one. Schools and colleges can access a range of advice to help them identify children in need of extra mental health support. This includes working with external agencies. If staff have a mental health concern about a child that is also a safeguarding concern, immediate action should be taken to follow their school or college's child protection policy and by speaking to the designated safeguarding lead or a deputy. All staff should be aware of the indicators of serious violence, which may signal that children are at risk from or involved with serious violent crime. These may include increased absence from school or college, a change in friendships or relationships with older individuals or groups, a significant decline in educational performance, signs of self-harm, or a significant change in well-being, or signs of assault or unexplained injuries. Unexplained gifts or new possessions could also indicate that children have been approached by or are involved with individuals associated with criminal networks or gangs and may be at risk of criminal exploitation. Additional information and support. Departmental advice, what to do if you're worried a child is being abused, advice for practitioners, provides more information on understanding and identifying abuse and neglect. Examples of potential indicators of abuse and neglect are highlighted throughout that advice and will be particularly helpful for schools and college staff. The NSPCC website also provides useful information on abuse and neglect and what to look out for. What school and college staff should do if they have concerns about a child. Staff working with children are advised to maintain an attitude of, it could happen here, where safeguarding is concerned. When concerned about the welfare of a child, staff should always act in the best interests of the child. If staff have any concerns about a child's welfare, they should act on them immediately. If staff have a concern, they should follow their own organisation's child protection policy and speak to the designated safeguarding lead or a deputy. Options will then include managing any support for the child internally via the school or college's own pastoral support processes, undertaking an early help assessment, or making a referral to statutory services. For example, as the child could be in need, is in need, or is suffering or likely to suffer harm. The designated safeguarding lead or a deputy should always be available to discuss safeguarding concerns. If, in exceptional circumstances, the designated safeguarding lead or deputies are not available, this should not delay appropriate action being taken. Staff should consider speaking to a member of the senior leadership team and or take advice from the local authority's children's social care. In these circumstances, any action should be shared with the designated safeguarding lead or a deputy as soon as practicably possible. Staff should not assume that a colleague or another professional will take action and share information that might be critical in keeping children safe. They should be mindful that early information sharing is vital for the effective identification, assessment, and allocation of appropriate service provision, whether this is when problems first emerge or where a child is already known to a local authority's children's social care, such as a child in need or a child protection plan. Information sharing, advice for practitioners providing safeguarding services to children, young people, parents and carers, support staff who may have to make decisions about sharing information. This advice includes the 7 golden rules for sharing information and considerations with regards to the Data Protection Act 2018, DPA, and the UK General Data Protection Regulation, the UK GDPR. DPA and UK GDPR do not prevent the sharing of information for the purposes of keeping children safe and promoting their welfare. If in any doubt about sharing information, staff should speak to their designated safeguarding lead or a deputy. Fears about sharing information must not be allowed to stand in the way of the need to safeguard and promote the welfare of children. Early help assessment. If early help is appropriate, the designated safeguarding lead or a deputy will generally lead on liaising with other agencies and setting up an inter-agency assessment as appropriate. Staff may be required to support other agencies and professionals in an early help assessment, in some cases acting as the lead practitioner. Further guidance on the effective assessment of the need for early help can be found in Working Together to Safeguard Children. Any such cases should be kept under constant review and consideration given to a referral to the local authority children's social care for assessment for statutory services if the child's situation does not appear to be improving or is getting worse. Statutory children's social care assessments and services. Where a child is suffering or is likely to suffer from harm, it is important that a referral to the local authority's children's social care and, if appropriate, the police is made immediately. Referral should follow the local referral process. Local authority children's social care assessments should consider where the children are being harmed in context outside of the home. So it is important that schools and colleges provide as much information as possible as part of the referral process. This will allow any assessment to consider all the information available and enable a contextual approach to address such harm. The online tool Report Child Abuse to Your Local Council directs to the relevant local authority children's social care contact details. Children suffering or likely to suffer significant harm. Local authorities, with the help of other organisations as appropriate, have a duty to make inquiries under Section 47 of the Children's Act of 1989 if they have reasonable cause to suspect a child is suffering or is likely to suffer significant harm. Such inquiries enable them to decide whether they should take any action to safeguard and promote the child's welfare, and must be initiated where there are concerns about maltreatment. This includes all form of abuse, neglect, and exploitation. What will the local authority do? Within 1 working day of a referral being made, a local authority social worker should acknowledge its receipt to the referrer and make a decision about the next steps and the type of response that is required. This will include determining whether the child requires immediate protection and urgent action is required, any services are required by the child and family, and what type of services. The child is in need and should be assessed under Section 17 of the Children's Act of 1989. Working Together to Safeguard Children provides details of the assessment process. There is reasonable cause to suspect the child is suffering or likely to suffer significant harm, and whether inquiries must be made and the child assessed under Section 47 of the Children's Act of 1989. Working Together to Safeguard Children provides details of the assessment process, and further specialist assessments are required to help the local authority decide what further actions to take. The referrer should follow up if this information is not forthcoming. If social workers decide to carry out a statutory assessment, staff should do everything they can to support that assessment, supported by the designated safeguarding lead or a deputy as required. If, after a referral, the child's situation does not appear to be improving, the referrer should consider following local escalation procedures to ensure their concerns have been addressed, and most importantly, that the child's situation improves. All concerns, discussions, and decisions made, and the reasons for those decisions should be recorded in writing. This will also help if, when, responding to any complaints about the way a case has been handled by the school or college. Information should be kept confidentially and stored securely. It is good practice to keep concerns and referrals in a separate child protection file for each child. Records should include a clear and comprehensive summary of the concern, details of how the concern was followed up and resolved, and a note of any action taken, decisions reached, and the outcome. If in doubt about the recording requirements, staff should discuss this with the designated safeguarding lead or a deputy. Why is all of this important? It is important to remember that children need to receive the right help at the right time to address safeguarding risks, prevent issues escalating, and to promote children's welfare. Research and local child safeguarding practice reviews have repeatedly shown the dangers of failing to take effective action. Further information about local safeguarding practice can be found in Working Together to Safeguard Children. Examples of poor practice include failing to act on and refer the early stages of abuse and neglect, poor record keeping, failing to listen to the views of the child, failing to reassess concerns when situations do not improve, not sharing information with the right people within and between agencies, sharing information too slowly, and a lack of challenge to those who appear not to be taking action. What school and college staff should do if they have a safeguarding concern or an allegation about another member of staff. Schools and colleges should have processes and procedures in place to manage any safeguarding concern or allegation, no matter how small, about staff members, including supply staff, volunteers, and contractors. If staff have a safeguarding concern or an allegation of harming or posing a risk of harm to children is made about another member of staff, including supply staff, volunteers, and contractors, then this should be referred to the head teacher or principal. Where there is a concern allegation about the head teacher or principal, this should be referred to the chair of governors, chair of the management committee, or proprietor of an independent school. And in the event of the concern allegation being about the head teacher, where the head teacher is also the sole proprietor of an independent school, or a situation where there is a conflict of interest in reporting the matter to the head teacher, this should be reported directly to the local authority's designated officer, the LADO. Details of your local LADO should be easily accessible on your local authority's website. If staff have a safeguarding concern or an allegation about another member of staff, including supply staff, volunteers, or contractors, that does not meet the harm threshold, then this should be shared in accordance with the school or college's low level concern policy. Further details can be found in Part 4 of the full version of Keeping Children Safe in Education. What school or college staff should do if they have concerns about safeguarding practices within the school or college. All staff and volunteers should feel able to raise concerns about poor or unsafe practice and the potential failures in the school or college's safeguarding provision, and know that such concerns will be taken seriously by the senior leadership team. Appropriate whistleblowing procedures should be put in place for such concerns to be raised with the school or college's senior leadership team. Where a staff member feels unable to raise an issue with their employer, or feels that there are genuine concerns that are not being addressed or other whistleblowing channels are open to them, such as general advice on whistleblowing, which can be found at Whistleblowing for Employees. The NSPCC's whistleblowing advice line is available as an alternative route for staff who do not feel able to raise concerns regarding child protection failures internally, or have concerns about the way a concern has been handled by their school or college. Staff can call 0800 028 0285, and the line is available from 8 am till 8 pm Monday to Friday and 9 am till 6 pm at weekends. The email address is help@nspcc.org.uk. Thank you to listening to that audiobook. Thank you for listening to that audiobook of part 1 of Keeping Children Safe in Education 2025. Keeping Children Safe in Education 2025 is subject to Crown copyright. My name's Lewis Donald. I'm the Principal Safeguarding Partner at EduShield Limited, a specialist safeguarding and major incident partnership services for schools, multi-academy trusts and education settings. You can learn more about our work at edushield.org.uk. Thank you for listening.